So the New York Knicks had a pretty disappointing end to their season, as they were gentlemen swept in the first round of the playoffs by the Atlanta Hawks. And although the end of the season was disappointing, overall this has to be viewed as a humongous positive for the Knicks. And this is because before the season, literally no one thought that the Knicks had a real chance to make the postseason. Probably even Knicks fans didn't think that. And this season shows that going forward, the Knicks can at least be a playoff team. But I do think it's clear that they're far from being a contending team or even a team that can give problems to the best teams in the league in the playoffs. And I think this offseason, there are some things that they can do to reach that next level. So in today's video, I'll be naming 4 things that I believe the New York Knicks should do this offseason. But before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content and toast my goal of 1,000 subscribers. Comment on this video, start a conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. First and most obvious thing that the New York Knicks need to do going into this offseason is adding more offensive players who can shoot and create plays for others and just create their own shot in general. Because throughout the season, the Knicks ranked as the 23rd best offense in the league, and in the postseason that was just magnified as they were depending on players like RJ Barrett and Julius Randle, who play styles I didn't think would translate well into the postseason. It was kind of predictable, since in my prediction video for the Knicks and Hawks, I said that the Hawks would win because I could tell that Julius Randle and RJ Barrett would play bad in the series. And what would you think? I'm actually right. So I think they need more players who could create their own shots and who can shoot the 3 ball at a good level. And the Knicks are a team with plenty of cap space, so that they definitely could make some moves in free agency to get guys like that. Some players who are available is a guy like Tony Snell, who had the best 3-point percentage in the NBA this season, and he probably shouldn't cost that much money. Patty Mills from the Spurs is always a good shooter. We already know that. Maybe they could look into bringing back Tim Hardaway Jr. from the Mavericks, since he's a really good shooter who can hit very difficult threes and he could create his own shot at a decent level. There's also Evan Fournier. He's going to be a free agent, and I doubt he stays in Boston, so he would be a great scorer for the Knicks as he could create his own shot well and shoot the ball at a good level. Spencer Dinwiddie is available, but he's going to be injured to start the season. But I think he could be a really good guard for them when he's healthy, as he can create his own shot and create plays for others. Maybe they could look into a guy like Norman Powell, who was averaging 20 points per game this season, and he's also a guy who just gives instant buckets. Maybe they could look into getting Lou Will, who we all know can give you buckets. He's not as good as he was before, but he still would definitely help this team out on offense. Lonzo Ball's going to be a restricted free agent, so I think New York should definitely look to throw an offer at him, since at this point in his career, he's an above average offensive player, but he's a great playmaker who could get a lot of easier shots for their other players. Or maybe they could look into getting Montrezl Harrell from the Lakers, who's a big man who can actually score the ball. So as it's shown, it's pretty clear that the Knicks have many options of players who could score the ball for them and help them out on that side of the floor. Nothing should stop them from getting at least 1, 2, or 3 of these guys. They could just get 2 or 3 of these guys. I think it could drastically help their team and make them way better for the future and next season. The second thing the New York Knicks should do this offseason is try and make a move to get the NBA superstar in Kawhi Leonard. And I know it kind of sounds like a bit of a stretch, and it kind of is, but you have to realize a big reason why Kawhi went to the Clippers was because he wanted to be on a bigger market, and the Knicks are literally the biggest market in the whole NBA. And it's obviously a very nice city. And if the Knicks were bad, then I would give them an absolutely 0% chance to get Kawhi. They actually had a competent team and looked like a competent franchise this season. So I think there's a chance that Kawhi would at least consider and look at them. I'm not saying I think the Knicks are going to sign him, because I wouldn't even be surprised if they didn't even get a meeting with him. But if they have the opportunity to, they definitely should look to sign Kawhi. And whether or not they have to trade certain players to make the money work or anything like that, they should look into signing Kawhi, obviously, because he's a superstar. The third thing the New York Knicks should do this offseason is considering the trade Julius Randle. And I know it sounds kind of crazy since he's coming off this amazing season where he was an all-star and he led the Knicks to the playoffs. Trust me, I know how it sounds. But in the postseason, Randle showed that he's clearly not a player who could be a #1 option on a good playoff team. It was absolutely horrible in the first round as he averaged 18 points and 11 rebounds, which sounds solid, but he shot a disgusting 29% from the field and 33% from 3. As I said, I predicted Randle would play bad in this series. I don't think a player of his skill set is someone who should be the #1 option. He reminds me a bit of Pascal Siakam with his game. And I think if the Knicks had a player who's better than him and a player who's like better in the postseason, he would be an amazing second or third option on a good team. But he's just simply not built to be a #1 option. And maybe they should trade him because maybe this season was a fluke. I'm not saying it's a fluke, but there definitely is a chance because there's been many players in previous years where they played amazing in one year, then they just fell down back to earth. And at this current moment, Randle's value is at its highest that it ever will be. So trading him shouldn't be too much of like a bargain. And I think they should trade him for some future young players or draft picks, or they should at least consider it. Because if they keep Julius Randle as their best player, I promise you they will never get. The fourth and final thing that I believe the New York Knicks should do this offseason is re-signing Derrick Rose and Nerlens Noel and maybe even Alec Burks. Obviously, they should re-sign Derrick Rose because he was their best player in the playoffs, and throughout the season, he was probably the third best player, and he was just a guy who brought a lot of offense to their team. Without him, they would be so much worse on offense, and I think he is very important to this team because he can actually create his own shot and create plays for others, and his scoring is much needed coming off the bench. They need to keep Nerlens Noel because he was one of the 10 best defenders in the NBA this season with his shot blocking, and I think he found a new home in New York, so I think he needs to just stay there and play his career out there. And I say they should maybe sign Alec Burks as long as it's a reasonable contract, but if they could look into getting a player who's better on offense than Alec Burks, like one of the players I was saying before, like maybe Lou Williams, Norman Powell, anyone on that caliber, then I think they need to sign one of them and let Alec Burks walk. New York could legitimately make some big moves this season, but one of the moves they have to do is definitely re-signing Derrick Rose and Nerlens Noel. Do not let them walk because I think it would drastically hurt this team. To conclude the video, I don't know what big moves the New York Knicks can do to turn into title contenders unless a superstar signs with them. I think at this point they need to try and become a team that can actually compete in the postseason. Because in my opinion, it was pretty obvious that the Atlanta Hawks were going to beat them. Because if you can't score at a good level in the postseason, no matter how good your defense is, you're not going to win. But nonetheless, this was a pretty good year for the Knicks, and I hope this is Julius Randle that we will see for the rest of his career. I really hope he isn't a Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know what you think the New York Knicks need to do this offseason. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want weekly NBA content. And tell me my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Comment on this video so to conversation with me as I do respond to all of my comments.